on. Now, I didn't grow up in a big city like New York, or LA, or Atlanta. I grew up in rural Alabama, 50 miles from Montgomery, outside of a little place called Troy. My father was a sharecropper, a tenant farmer. But back in 1944, when I was 4 years old, and I do remember when I was 4. How many of you remember when you were 4? Well, what happened to the rest of us? A man sold my father 110 acres of land for $300. My family still owns this land. We raised a lot of peanuts. I don't eat too many peanuts today. And don't tell the people in Georgia I don't eat too many peanuts. I ate so many peanuts when I was growing up, I just don't want to see more peanuts. Sometime I will be out there working in the field, picking cotton, pulling corn, gathering peanuts. And my mother would say, boy, you're falling behind, you need to catch up. And I would say, this is hard work. And she would say, hard work never killed anybody. I said, well, it's about to kill me. I didn't like working out in the hot sun. Growing up there as a little boy, when we would visit the little town of Troy, visit Montgomery, visit Tuskegee, I saw those signs that said white men, colored men, white women, white waiting, colored waiting. And I would ask a lot of questions. And my mother would say, boy, you're too nosy. That's the way it is. Don't get in the way, don't get in trouble. But in 1955, when I was 15 years old in the 10th grade, I heard of Rosa Parks. I heard of Martin Luther King Jr. And I met Rosa Parks when I was 17. The next year at the age of 18, I met Martin Luther King Jr. And I got involved in the American Civil Rights Movement. And I have not looked back since. Very simple. When you see something that is not right, not fair, not just, you have a moral obligation to say something, to do something, to speak up and speak out. With March, we spoke out. Andrew, Aydin here, we came together and did a little book called March. And now we have a new book on the way called Ron. We marched from Selma to Montgomery, but now we got to run. We got to run and make our country a better place. But there are forces trying to take us back to another time and another place. We've come too far, we made too much progress, and we're not going back. We're going to run. And we got to go to the polls and vote like we never, ever voted before. On that bridge on March 7th, 1965, I gave a little blood. I almost died on that bridge because people could not register to vote simply because of the color of their skin. People were asked to count the number of bubbles on the bar soap, the number of jelly beans in a jar. There were African American lawyers and doctors, college professors, were told they could not read or write well enough. So now we hope that you have an opportunity to read, run, and run will inspire another generation of young people, another generation of students, and those of us that are my age will be inspired again, over and over again, to help redeem the soul of America and create the beloved community. A man by the name of Afua Richardson, who was born in Jacksonville, Florida, moved to New York City, to this city, became a champion of civil rights, human rights, and labor rights. We were planning a march on Washington. He kept saying maybe our foremothers and our forefathers all came to this great land in different ships. But we all are in the same boat now. That is still true today. So it doesn't matter whether we are black or white, Latino, Asian American, or Native American. We are one people, we are one family, we all live in the same house. Not just the American house, but the world house. We must look out for each other and care for each other. And never ever give up. Never lose hope. We can do it. It's my belief that it will be the children, the young people, the women, not just men, but the women will help us get there. And we will get there. We will create a beloved community. We will redeem the soul of America. So be prepared to run with us. Thank you very much.
My name is Aydin. Yeah. Hey, man, that was good. When I was in high school, I got in trouble for having my comic books out on my desk. And I put them out in English class. My English teacher came by and she picked them up and she said, "I'm sorry, you can't have them out right now. They're not real books." And that memory has stayed with me since high school. And I got to go back and I got to speak to that English teacher. And she's now teaching the Congressman's graphic novels in her class. And I think about, I grew up in this district. Congressman Lewis was my congressman since I was 3 years old. And I never heard the story of the young people of SNCC. I went to Atlanta Public Schools, I went to school in Atlanta, I went to college. Nobody ever told me the role and the power of young people in the civil rights movement. It was always Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King, I have a dream. And that was the story I was told. But when I came to work for Congressman Lewis, I heard these fantastic, the important role, the way that they push the older generation to give up their recalcitrance to change, the way some of the fundamental rights that we have today were earned by those young people. And in telling his story and bringing that history to a new generation, I think we've seen a reawakening of young people in America. We've spent the last 5 years touring the country, going to reading programs, going to visit schools. Just last week we were in Cook County Juvenile Detention Facility where we did a reading program with incarcerated youth. We've gone all over the country. And the question that we keep getting, all right, so we've marched, we are marching, we're engaging in civil disobedience. But how do we engage in the political process? How do we go from activists to public servants? How do they make the transition that John Lewis made? And that's the story we're trying to tell. Because to the Congressman, the civil rights movement ended with the signing of the Voting Rights Act. And what happened after was painful. There was a coup. John Lewis was pushed out of SNCC. The murder of Sammy Young, the murder of Jonathan Daniels. African Americans were murdered simply for trying to exercise their right to organize and their right to vote. Things that we are experiencing in full force today. But the answers to our problems are also found in John Lewis's story. The answers of perseverance. The answers of how you go from being an activist to a public servant. And through Run, we're going to try and show you the way. We're going to try and let history be our guide. We're going to find a way out of no way. And as the Congressman says, we're going to use these comics to redeem the soul of America. So I just want to say what an honor it is to have Afua Richardson on board. All right, now I know who y'all really clapping for. But I first met Afua at a Black Comics Expo back in 2014. It was the first time I'd ever been invited to a comic show to table. And I'm sitting there with my One March book, and they're looking at me like, why is that white guy talking about civil rights? And across the table, Afua had her comics. She had Genius was out at the time, and I remember watching her with the young people and seeing how careful and sensitive she was to each one of them. And how when they came up, even though there was this big giant line, she gave them all the time in the world. The adults can wait. It's the young people that need the time. And so when Nate decided that he was ready to do his own books, which I can understand, I couldn't think of anybody else better. And I begged and I pleaded, and I asked her several times. And she said yes. And so I cannot wait for you guys to see what we've been cooking up. It's going to be a part of history that other people haven't seen before. Many of the scenes that you're going to see and run are not documented in other people's books. What I hope I brought to this is my nerdiness. And I mean that. Because so much of this book is derived from primary sources, from newspaper clippings, from oral history tellings from the 60s, from SNCC after-action reports and meeting minutes, Watts line reports, all these primary documents that have been preserved and digitized that we're now using to synthesize a story that has not been told to this depth before. That's why I'm so grateful to Abrams and everything they're doing to support us, because this is the most complicated graphic novel you will have ever seen. Because it's the truth. It's the whole truth. We don't sweep anything under the rug. So I'm excited. Bear with us because we're working as fast as we possibly can. But this is hard. Nobody's ever done something like this before. And this is a period of history that people don't understand. If we felt like they didn't understand the movement, wait till you get to 1966. But John Lewis is going to show us the way. He's going to show us how to get through this period of time that we're in right now. As the Congressman says, we'll get there. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Afua Richardson, and I am a native New Yorker, so it's really nice to be back. Yeah, I was born and raised here, and it is a tough city, and it will make you tough. My family is from Tuscaloosa, Alabama, so I heard the stories secondhand. My father would tell me about the things that he had to experience. He was a farmer and also an oil painter and a physicist. Anything he could get his hands on, he did it with his whole heart. So he taught me to do the same thing. But where he grew up, the opportunities weren't there for him. So he didn't want me to be disappointed. He wanted me to do art, but said, you know, art's just not for us. And I didn't listen. Because I am not a person who will take the safe road, because that's not how things are accomplished. When did the hero ever get the sword because he took the safe road? Never. When did he ever save the princess? Only after he fought the dragon. And this is our dragon, our era, the things that we're facing now. This is our dragon. Thanks for dealing with my nerd reference. You guys can appreciate that. We're at a time where we feel hopeless. And it's easy to feel that way. It's easy to feel like we have no power. Like, what can I do? I'm one person. You can do so much. You can affect your community just by being of service. Doing what you're doing, trying to figure out how you can make your immediate circle better. That's how we change it. No matter who's sitting in the presidency, we still have to be good to each other. We still have to take and remember our power, no matter how small we are. I remember being 3 years old and thinking, well, if people aren't happy, I have to make it happen. Like, if someone isn't happy, if I'm not happy, I have to make that so. I can't expect anyone to do it for me. We are at a place where we need people to be innovative and remember their power. And this book and things that John Lewis and Andrew have done, these are powerful things. And he's a quiet man until he gets fired up. And it's okay. It's okay to be quiet. It's okay to observe. But remember that that is powerful. There is power in kindness. My grandmother, she lived in Tuscaloosa, and she passed the voting test, but they were pretty certain that she cheated. So they put her in jail for 3 years. And there was no female prisons at the time, so she was in a chicken coop, and she developed pneumonia. But she won't talk about the story very often. She still has the bravery to be kind. She still has compassion to open her door to anyone who needs help. And so I think to myself, well, I didn't face what she faced. What is my excuse? I'm not standing in her shadow, I'm standing on her shoulders. So I am super excited to work on this book, because I'm doing what she couldn't. I am doing what my father couldn't. And I wanted to remind the smallest, and most powerful little warrior that they have so much that they can give, and we need it. So, thanks for running with us. And now we're going to open the floor to some questions. If you could, keep them brief.
I think they've got a mic back there if you want to just raise your hand and then...
Don't be shy.
Hello.
Hello.
I'd like to say that I know there's not very many of you here who experience what Congressman Lewis is talking about. But I am one of those foot soldiers from Marion, Alabama, where Jimmy Jackson was here trying to get the voters right. I'd like to commend him. I'd like to commend all of the people that helped us, the times that we marched and they were told to lock the gates, don't let the kids out. But I'm a witness that we climbed the gate and we got out and we marched. And I'm so thankful for that era. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for being here. Marion, Alabama is the hometown of Mrs. Martin Luther King Jr. and Mrs. Andrew Young, Coretta Scott King, and Gene Young. Thank you for your help. Thank you for your service. Thank you for being here.
First of all, thank you so much for being here. And my question is, how do we properly remember what's happening and what's going on, and how do we properly teach and inform children?
Well, young children very, very young. They're so smart these days. They're very smart. Pass the books on to them. Tell the story of the movement. Almost every single week, a group of young people, children, come to my office in Washington to learn the stories of the strikes. Many young people come from the city of New York, come from all over America. They come to have their book signed. They listen and watch the drummer. If you come and visit my office, it looked like a working museum. A lot of historic photographs with Rosa Parks, with Dr. King, on the road from Selma to Montgomery, the sit-ins, the Freedom Ride. Many young people don't understand that in 1961, the same year that President Barack Obama was born, that black people and white people could be seated together on a Greyhound bus, leaving Washington, D.C., to travel through Virginia, through North Carolina, through Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi. And many young people came from this city. They were arrested, jailed, beaten. 3 young men came to Mississippi, 2 from New York City, and 1 was already in Mississippi. The night of June 21st, 1964, working voter registration, arrested, taken to jail, taken out of the jail. They were beaten, shot, and murdered. We need to know what happened, how people suffered to make it possible for people to be able to participate in the democratic process. Now some people say nothing has changed. I feel like saying, come and walk in my shoes. We made changes, a lot of changes, but we still have a distance to go.
One thing I'll add to that is with children, you have to meet them where they are. There's so much media to compete with, and people learn differently. So if you can make something that will help them learn the best way they learn, then that's where you can engage them. If they listen to music, make a song about it. If they read comics, make a comic about it, because that's the medium that they're engaged in, and that's how they'll retain the information.
Thank you for coming, all of you. So inspiring for everything that you do. My husband and I are educators and have our PhDs in education. We've been, between us, I think we have 50 years teaching young children. So, and I'm inspired by what I see with this generation, the accepting generation is what I call it. They accept each other for who they are. Absolutely changed. But we're frightened by what we've seen in the schools. Most recently at Parkland, well, that was the recent one. The Parkland kids, they rose up. But what's the next step for them? Because we are fearful as well. How do we empower them? How do we help them? What's the roadmap for them?
A march is a roadmap, but I tell you, run would be a better roadmap. Andrew would tell you, we've had students from Parkland to come and visit with us in D.C., in Atlanta. But there's students all over America, young people, very, very young, in elementary school, middle school, high school, coming together, saying we can do something. We can organize a march. We can have a sit-in. They're taking a lead from us. A group of members of Congress had what you call a sit-in on the floor of the House to try to do something about gun violence.
And you ordered pizza.
And we need to do it over and over again to get the Congress to act. It doesn't make sense that hundreds and thousands and millions of young people live in fear that something is going to happen to them. And then we have the dreamers. We got to set these young people free.
Your question to us, the answer is the exact reason why we decided to do Run. Because March did well, this monument for comics, why keep going? And the answer was that we had to tell this part of the story. Because we have to go from activism to public service. We have to take control of the government back. The reason we're in this mess is because Congress refuses to act. Congress has a gerrymandered system, which means we have to go down to the state legislatures, we have to take seats in county commissions, we have to take seats on city councils. And that's going to start with local organizing, and nobody is better suited for that than the young people. And so if we can take their activism, we can harness it, we can show them how John Lewis learned to go from being someone fighting and being beaten simply to be able to register to vote, being somebody who organizes people to vote. That political power that they fought for in Alabama and Georgia and all throughout the South in the 60s, if they can harness that power again, that's how we answer your question. That's how we find a solution. And that's why we decided to do Run, so that we can give those young people a roadmap.
Hello, how you doing? My name is Aydin. I'm from Orlando. The reason I'm here today is because my job allowed me to go into the schools and mentor young kids. Now, my first mentee, his name was Bill, and Bill in the second grade was headed to jail. He used to tell me he and his friends would sit back and try and figure out what it was like to be in jail, because his father was in jail, his uncle was in jail, and that's all he knew. Bill, this year, has graduated from high school, headed to college. And one thing, by getting back and helping other people, I made a difference in his life. He made a difference in my life. Because I'm grateful to be here. Now, one of the things we do in Orlando, and probably in a lot of places, is that, you go to the barber shop to change the world. Because in the barber shop we get into these big conversations and we talk about how things work. I find one of the problems, and I'm always on the opposite side of everybody, because everybody is ready to give up. Everybody says that things are so bad that we need to just give in. They're against the government, they're against everybody. What do you do? How do you change an individual's thought process when they're so willing to give up? If I would have given up on Bill a long time ago, he would have been part of the statistics. He would have been stuck in jail right now. Maybe one of those that were killed because of doing something stupid. How do you change society when they're so ready to give in and give up and says, well, we can't make it work?
When I was a teenager, I was homeless from about 16 to 20, 21. And you think to yourself, there's no way out of this. This is the only way for me. Someone like me, this is it. This is the only path for me. There's no way that I could go to college. There's no way that I could have any other life than what is expected, which is for me to go to jail, commit a crime, any of those other things that tally along with being black, whatever that prerequisite is. Until I started to develop skills. Once I started to empower myself and learn that there was another way, then I made another way. And I needed a lot of help. And I had a lot of people who were generous, a lot of people loaned me their couch, a lot of people who took time with me and said, hey, why don't you try this? Very, very small goals. Because a lot of times, a lot of people are fearful, like you folks were mentioning, like we don't know what the next step is because they're afraid. It's in the fear. When you don't have a solution, when there's no communication, there's no innovation, people get fearful and they start to get into their almost animal brain survival mechanism. He was in a survival mechanism because that is how his father and his father before him survived. But if there's another way to survive and thrive, not just surviving, but thriving, or communicating in a way where it's like the children who are so frustrated, they're willing to bring a gun to school, that they're being communicated with, they're being isolated for some reason. Building that communication, building a community in a way that enables the individual, not necessarily giving them something that's just like, oh, well, you can't do it on your own, poor you, but reminding them of their own power. That's why the story is so important, because he took power into his own hands, and he put feet on his prayers. It wasn't just, things are terrible, oh well, I can't do it. He decided to put those words into motion. So how do you enable the young people who you are mentoring to walk on their own 2 feet? What can you give them? And that's where the innovation starts coming in. What is something that they enjoy, that they're good at? You know, and it's nurturing that aspect. Like, you are capable, you are powerful. Reminding them of that, and showing them and giving them a way to do that. Like, because that's what helped me. I learned how to use a computer. I taught myself to draw. I did not go to school. I was a classical flautist. All things.
Very good.
And, but I knew how to learn. I knew that I wasn't good at this, and if I repeated this, I would get better at it over time. I started to connect, but I won't rant on. But if you folks want to add to that.
You have the power to reach out and become part of a community. And you have to tell people to never, ever give up, to never become bitter, never get lost in a sea of despair. You have to keep the faith. When you give up, when you lose that sense of hope, it's like non-existent. I got arrested and went to jail 40 times during the 60s. And since I've been in Congress, another 5 times. And I'm probably going to get arrested and go to jail again. But I'm hopeful. I'm optimistic that we're going to have a victory. We all do what we can in our own time, in our own space, with others. You have to believe it. Keep picking them up, putting them down.
What made you dive headfirst into the civil rights movement? Because I know I didn't do that. So, like,
Would you repeat that one more time?
what made you dive headfirst into the civil rights movement? Because I know I couldn't do that.
Thank you very, very much for your question. I saw segregation. I felt the stain of segregation and racial discrimination. I didn't like it. My mother, my father, my grandparents and great-grandparents told me, don't get in trouble. Don't get in the way. I knew what I saw was wrong. And as I said before, Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King Jr. and others inspired me to do something. And I did it. And I kept doing it. And I will continue to do it. As long as one little child or one adult is being put down, being discriminated against, because that person is African American, a white, a Latino, an Asian American, a Native American, then we have to do something. We have to assess something. And so that's why I continue to get involved. Okay? That's okay? Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Back in 98 and 99 in Kentucky, I learned about 2 gentlemen, A. Philip Randolph and John Lewis. So I joined an organization called Phi Beta Sigma, which I'm sure you're familiar with, Brother Lewis. So one, thank you for being here and all the work that you do. But along this almost 20 years, I've learned so much that you can't stop. You can't ask the oppressed to solve oppression, right? Like, it takes others to join the fight. So what I want to know, Andrew, as much, I've heard Brother Lewis talk so many times, but Andrew, as you were writing and learning and researching, what assumptions do you think you made that the things that jumped out that you didn't know until you started writing this book? When you were able to put yourself in the struggle of other people, what did you learn?
I appreciate that question because it was such a profound experience going through this. When you're reading the recollections of these activists firsthand, they become real people to you. These are like my imaginary friends that I talk to. And the one I always think about is Bayard Rustin. He's such an incredible organizer, but he was so misunderstood. And he was lambasted for being gay. He was outed on the Senate floor. And yet when he died, he said one of the most meaningful moments of his life was simply that thank you from A. Philip Randolph at the end of the March on Washington. And for me, as I understood the conflict, why that was so meaningful to him, why him getting that position was so difficult, and that the conflict within the civil rights movement, the disagreement between the big six, where you have A. Philip Randolph and Whitney Young, or A. Philip Randolph and Dr. King and John Lewis on one side of the issue, and Whitney Young and Roy Wilkins on the other side of the issue, didn't want Bayard Rustin to be chair because he was gay. They thought it would have this blowback. And it did, but it didn't matter because he was so good at what he did. And there's all of these stories about the disagreements within the movement where people had two different points of view and they had to work it out. And it says something that in this day and age, when we look back on the movement, we assume it was a monolith. We assume that they all agreed. And that, this is what I was taught as a kid. And that conflict, that disagreement over tactics, over what is right and what is wrong, and out of that conflict coming progress, coming some of the great social advancements that we've had as a society, that opened my eyes. Because I grew up in the South. I grew up in Atlanta, and Atlanta was in many ways a bubble in the midst of a more conservative region. And I didn't understand a lot of the things and why they happened growing up. I didn't understand the history of it. I didn't understand why people organized the way they did, why people were stuck in a system. I remember watching the way I was raised by a single mom. My father was an immigrant who left when I was very young, and I remember not understanding why they treated my mother so differently, just because she was a single mom. But it was the society, right? And we're going through these same struggles again. We're going through these same cycles. Forward and back, forward and back, forward and back. And for the movement, for me, to read their recollections and to see what they experienced, it showed me, okay, I'm going to do my nerdy again. You ever watch Battlestar Galactica? So all of this has happened before, and all of this will happen again. And that's where we're at. And that's what changed my perception entirely. That it's okay to disagree. But at the end of the day, when you make your decision, you need to have your eye on the long arc of history. That you want to be on the right side of history. And sometimes that means listening to your brothers and sisters and taking a little bit of guidance. And then maybe some of the things that we were taught when we were young that were right, that they told us were right, are in fact wrong. And we don't have to accept them. And we got to hold up Bayard Rustin. I love that guy.
One more question?
Hello. Hi. The first thing that I want to say, let your nerd flag fly. But I also want to say I studied history when I was in college, and when you read about historical events, you always wonder, what would I do in this situation? And so I'm so grateful that you are helping to write the roadmap for young people to know what to do, because we are in an iconoclastic time again. Things are changing. I live in DC, and I love being there because it is kind of the heartbeat and the center of the current resistance of our time. And it's wonderful to see all of the young people marching in the streets. And there's so many different things that they're passionate about right now, because there are so many things in our life that are under threat right now. You have, equality. You have the gun march that was happening. You have the science march, the environmental side of everything. There are so many things happening. And I do wonder, it's great to see the passion out there, but are we fracturing our efforts because there's just so much under attack right now? Or is it better that we're all motivated for our kind of niche thing that we really want to see happen? Because it seems like in the past there was a fractured effort on how to approach a problem, but you all seem to be aiming toward a similar problem, and now I feel like we're so fractured in that. I didn't know if you could speak to how that's different now. Thank you.
I think people are going to approach what they're passionate about. Just they're going to go after the things that are important to them, and that can't really be dictated by anyone. Like, oh, well, this particular struggle is more important than anyone else's. So if someone is very passionate about not only talking about the change, but being change and being willing to not just say, hey, someone should do something, to transforming that into, I'm going to do something, and then really thinking of strategies, because that's what we need. Like, everyone's idea of freedom or equality is not actually going to line up, even if you're going for a similar goal. So just having a conversation, starting the conversation and working towards a goal, even if it's towards different things, I don't think it's too much of a problem to be divided in that regard. Of course, people would disagree, like, oh, this is the most important thing right now. Maybe not in their world, necessarily. If someone is willing to put their heart into moving that thing forward, I say let them. You know, and because they're going to do that the best way they possibly can.
So I love that you asked this question. I love it because we just finished writing a scene that deals with this exact same question. Because this is what SNCC went through when they were dealing with their opposition to the war in Vietnam. How do you attack this big problem when there's so many different elements that we have a problem with? Whether it's the draft itself or the fact that America is using imperial power in Southeast Asia. Do we sue the selective service, or do we burn our draft cards? Do we boycott certain companies because they make money off of it? How do you go about doing this? And what part of it do you attack? And we wrote this, we got the meeting minutes. This is crazy, right? So we get these meeting minutes, and it's like a 24-page document. We found the night, it was November 24th, 1965. This is before SNCC opposed the war in Vietnam. And there was this long conversation between John Lewis, Charlie Cobb, and Jim Foreman, and Ruby Doris Smith, and I'm sorry, don't worry, we're going to have a character list in the back of this book. Right, and then ultimately SNCC issues this statement on January 3rd, right? But this debate over how we get there, that's what we try so hard to show. Because all too often, the textbooks, the version you see in movies, the versions you see in other places around pop culture, is simply the statement. But it doesn't show the process of how you get there. And that's what we've always felt our books have made be a little different. Because we try and show that process, the disagreements, the struggle behind the scenes, so that you're never going to hear anybody be able to say with a straight face, again, this isn't your grandparents' civil rights movement, because in fact, it is your grandparents' civil rights movement, and you need to understand what your grandparents know so that you can lead your civil rights movement as well as they did.
What I really love about that exact scene is that it wasn't just, you know, how do black people achieve what it is that they're sought out to achieve, that there were whites involved too, you know, and they were, that's what I love about the SNCC logo. It's a black and white hand holding hand in hand, because that's what it's going to take. Like, if someone were to tell me that just because someone is lighter that they're not my sister or they're not my brother, I heavily disagree with them. I don't care if we grew up differently. We all want the same basic things. I mean, if we all look the same, that'd be so boring, honestly. But the togetherness, it's not always going to happen, but if your goals are common, then the technique, that can be sorted out. You know, if what you're aiming for is like just basic human decency, the roadmap to it is going to have lots of corrections. But we'll get there.